top. So there, we're running live there. Chad's going to also put it up on the Facebook group as well. So always a good time to stall there. It's one up and getting everybody a chance to get a big sip of coffee before we are actually live. And okay, here we are, guys. Welcome to the premiere first show of Broncos for Breakfast. We just met last night. We're tossing out names and just came to me, Broncos for Breakfast. They're like, that's it. That's the one. Let's roll.
And I quit looking.
Yeah, welcome everybody, and welcome to Scott Kennedy joining us today. I know he's been on the Huddle Up podcast a few times. Good morning, Scott. How you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm here in Atlanta, so it's a little bit later. I've had time to get my coffee in. I'm about ready for second breakfast by now.
Oh man, a Lord of the Rings joke. We are going to be just fine. Guys, this is Broncos for Breakfast. It is 7 a.m. here in Pacific time, but I know it's 8 o'clock in God's country, the Mountain Time Zone. So thank you everybody for joining us today. I see that we got Travis Bruley in the house, John Dahira coming in. Morning show. Absolutely right. Jamil Killings. Morning Broncos country. Morning to you, Jamil. Always killing it. Mohammed Badri in the house saying good morning. So obviously the super chat, we appreciate everybody coming in here. We got Sebastian in the house too, rocking the Giants. Happy baseball season, everybody. I know the Rockies are not as good this year. I am a St. Louis Cardinal fan, so I always appreciate you, Rockies, sending us Matt Holliday, Larry Walker, now Nolan Arenado. The best farm system in baseball, the Rockies to the Cardinals. Love you guys. Great job.
Right?
Adam Wayne. Yeah, exactly. So great. So we appreciate the heck out of you guys. Before we even get going too far, today's show is Broncos for Breakfast. Obviously, just getting into that. You guys can follow us on Twitter. You can follow myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, you can follow Scott on Twitter at Scout Kennedy. That's this SCOUT. So a little play on words there. I was reading that. I was like, is his name actually Scout? That's awesome. No, it's Scott Kennedy. So you can follow us both. Also, make sure you go on over to Twitter to follow us at Mile High Huddle. We do not have a Twitter account yet, but I'm sure we will pretty soon. If you're joining us on YouTube today, biggest thing you can do for a big favor for us, click like, subscribe, and share for our shows. Now that we're coming to you in morning, especially coming up to the draft, the best time of the year. I mean, football, Christmas. You guys want to make sure you're joining us for your drive into work or in the morning. You know, not everybody can join us every night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So now we're getting some morning content for you. Also, guys, don't miss our great off-season content at Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of Sports Illustrated. So let's get into it. Scott, you've been, I guess, before we even get too far down the track, give us a little bit of an introductory, bit of you. You've been working in the football side of things, not mostly, but a lot of it with high school recruiting side of things. So you follow these kids, not just college, but like from the roots. Like, know a lot of these names.
Yeah, it started for me as in the recruiting. Actually, for me, it really started as NFL draft. You know, I'm an Atlanta sports fan. Grew up in the 80s. If you were an Atlanta sports fan in the 80s, your teams were bad. So I grew up, getting into the draft. I was 16 years old in 1989. I use this story all the time. People ask me how I get into this. I'm like, well, as a Falcons fan, you kind of watch other teams and the draft. And in 1989, the number one pick was Troy Aikman. Number 2, Tony Mandrich. Number 3, Barry Sanders. Number 4, Derek Thomas. Number 5, Deion Sanders.
Man,
you remember those guys, and then you go on and watch them the next year, and you're like, wow, this draft stuff's awesome.
Yeah, God.
You don't realize that it's not like that all the time. So one thing leads to another. When I get to college, I go to a big SEC school. I get into recruiting, and one thing leads to another. I end up being the director of scouting at Scout, doing college football recruiting rankings, doing NFL draft rankings. So I've done a lot of stuff through the digital media. I did some NFL draft stuff with NFL Draft Network because they were 5 minutes from my house, and they were come on in with NFL Network doing NFL draft stuff. So, but the key is I know these guys from high school moving forward. I got a little bit into the administrative side and building other things for other people, including helping to build the Fan Nation Network on Sports Illustrated. Now I want to build something for me, including Broncos for Breakfast. So let's get this going.
Yeah, guys, we got some more people coming in here. We got Glenn Hauser, always a friend of the show. Luke saying, oh, it's afternoon in Ireland. Well, hello across the sea. That's awesome. Nathan in the house as well. CC, friend of the show. Oh, Abby in the house. Good morning, everyone. Good morning to you, Bryce. Man, this is awesome. Oh, this is great. Yeah, good response so far. Hey, this is cool. Broncos for Breakfast. Love it. Dylan in the house as well. We got to give a shout out to our super chat guys. You guys are great. Thank you for joining us today. If you are joining us on Facebook, click the little thumbs up there. That helps us a lot. Main topic today, though, before we get too down the tracks, and everyone, again, shout out to Scott for joining us day one. He's been with Chad worked with Chad for a long time. So we're really excited to get a different perspective on here. We don't like echo chambers, right? We want to have different opinions. So getting a new voice in here, fantastic. And I'm excited to hear what you have to say here. The big question, everybody's mind, the Broncos' looming decision at pick number 9. If they stay at pick number 9, which is apparently not set in stone. So what do you think here? The Broncos, obviously, you know this team you're not super close in a sense that you are a fan. You don't have personal ties to them. So I'm really curious about your opinion of how this team is built and how the top 10 of the draft is shaping up for where the Broncos could go at 9.
Well, and talking with listening to Chad and listening to you guys a lot, I know that corner is a big thing. The first time that Chad and I started talking about this in January, I said, "Tell me your biggest needs," and I think he put corner down 3 times. Mm-hmm. So obviously that's a good need pick, and the good thing for the Broncos and really anybody in the top 10 is this is a really deep draft. I've said it several times. I've been on here a couple of times talking about it. This is a good year to be drafting in the top 10 because there are some impact players. There's several players to choose from at corner. If you stay that direction, my personal preference, if I've got 9 and I want a corner and I'm drafting for the Denver Broncos, I take Patrick Surtain. That's where I go out of Alabama. I think he's the surest thing right there. There's a couple other options: Caleb Farley, maybe even J.C. Horn. And we could go in a different direction and pick someone else. But if I'm looking corner, that's my guy. And we can talk about, if you have any questions, throw them in there about who takes whom leading up to that point and who might be available. But for me, I think that your corners are going to be there at 9. And I think that Patrick Surtain is your guy.
Yeah, and that's a great topic. Obviously, the Broncos' needs have probably shifted a little bit since the free agency period. Obviously, paying Ronald Darby a good contract, bringing Kyle Fuller in, literally, I think signed him 56 minutes after his release was official. So shout out to Fangio for that one. But I think cornerback is still very much in play. I mean, if you're playing in the AFC West, this is becoming the Big 12 of the NFL with the bombs away offenses. Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Derek Carr are pretty underrated as well. So you don't need just 3 good cornerbacks. You need 4 or 5. So if there's a good one at 9, I mean, I'm all for it, honestly. Now, I do question Patrick Surtain's specific scheme fit. I do think he is smart enough and versatile, but I think he is best in more of a press coverage. And Vic Fangio on the boundary has historically played the lowest amount of press coverage on the boundary from his wide cornerback. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes, good. That's a good point and a good question, because I think looking at those two on film and their playmakers, those two, for me, the top 2 guys are Caleb Farley and Patrick Surtain. So for me, that's really your choice. And we can talk a little about J.C. Horn too, but for me, it's the 2 guys. That is, to me, the difference. So that is a great point, because when I watch Farley play, to me, he's one of those playmaking corners who has a little bit of license to roam. So I think of him as like the free safety corner. He'll come off his guy, keep his eye in the backfield because he's got such great athleticism, where he will come off his guy and cover a guy in the slot. He'll be out on the boundary and see someone coming in the slot, and he's the one that's going to break in. Surtain is you hit the nail on you hit it right there. He's a press guy. He's a press, not necessarily a press and release, because he can absolutely turn and run, but I think he's a little more physical at the point of attack. I think he's a little bit better against the run, and I like that in my guys. I like a good old fashioned cover 2, press release, turn them over to the safeties, and make sure you're stopping those quick hitches, the screen passes, and have a guy in the cornerback position that can snuff that out. And I think that's where Patrick Surtain is ahead of Farley. But if I'm looking for a guy to turn and run, maybe be a playmaker, be another, the nickel guy, a free safety in a nickel, then Farley's probably your guy. So for my pick at Surtain, that's personal preference for me and how I like them to play.
For sure. Yep. Now with Vic Fangio here, and obviously the renaissance of Matt Corder's defense across the entire league, kind of learn the specifics of the defensive scheme and needs, getting a guy who is projects better in off coverage versus press can be a make or break or a difference maker in my eyes for the position. But I come back to Ozzie Newsome, who's been one of the best recruiters / football minds in football for the last, 10, 20 years he's been in the front office. He says in the draft, you don't have to hit home runs, hit doubles. And I think Surtain one of the safest doubles in this entire class. I do want to get to Game Russ's comment here. Isn't Horn a better scheme fit, though? I guess between Horn / Surtain, I think Fairleigh's the best scheme fit. He has the back issues, which the injuries are concerning, picking in the top 10. But Horn, to me, he's another guy who fits better in press. I think he is a little less patient in his technique. I think he gets a little bit grabby, and that does concern me, especially in the NFL. I think you're going to see more down the field penalties, and it's different. There's a difference between a 15-yard pass interference in college and a 30-yarder in the NFL. But what do you think about Horn here being a scheme fit, or just the talent in general, if you don't want to get into Fangio's
I
match?
think he's right between those guys, honestly. Yeah. I think, and that's a good place to be, where if you're talking about, I want my guy to be more physical up front, I want Surtain. If I want my guy to be better in coverage, and not necessarily better in coverage, man-on coverage, I'm talking about just the ability to come off your guy and make a play while also being able to stick with your guy downfield. Farley's great at that, and I think that you're right in between there with Horn, where Horn might not be quite as physical as Surtain, but might be better behind the ball than Surtain. He's not as good in coverage as Farley, but isn't quite as physical as Surtain. So I think he's right in between those guys. So depending on exactly what you want and how it fits, you've got good choices. And we started at the top of the show saying it's a great time to be picking in the top 10. We talk about trading up and trading down. If you're like, you know what, I'd be happy with any of these guys. And if there's 3 of them there at 9, why not move back a couple spots? That's an option also. We talk about best player available. Well, the best draft isn't necessarily the best player available. It's the best player available that also fits a need in your scheme. And you might be able to do that and pick up another second rounder or third rounder and get one of those 3 guys that you like. So that's always an option too. Quick,
absolutely.
I want to shout out to the guys in Ireland. I know you guys. When we go over to my channel at one point, which is just youtube.com/C/Scott Kennedy, my name, I'll put that in the chat later. I talk a lot of football, your football, Champions League day. I'm ready. Chelsea fan here, so I appreciate you guys being out in the afternoon. I know it helps kill time before Champions League comes up.
Yeah, blue is the color, right, Scott?
Yeah, that's so appreciate you going there. But there's a lot of people there talking about moving up, moving down, and Nick, I want your thoughts on that, and what are the possibilities, and then we can talk about who might be available and how they might fit as well.
For sure. For me, I think Tyler comes in here with a good point. If we traded back in the 15 to 20 range, which cornerbacks are still on the board that might make sense? For me, a guy that is my number 3 cornerback because of Farley's back injury and concerns. Farley was my number, I think, 6 overall player on my board before the injury concerns propped up again. But trading back, Greg Newsome. I think he's a cornerback that makes a lot of sense. Good athlete. Obviously, he has had, you're talking about injuries. He's missed games the last 3 years, so that's a concern. But this year, his tape was phenomenal. He's a good long cornerback, a little bit wiry, a little top heavy, but he can play that off coverage. And again, if you're looking for a cornerback that can do some off coverage stuff from the boundary, Greg Newsome in that pick 18 to 25 range, I'd have no issue with it. And I'm all about investing in the cornerback position because it's so valuable. You need bodies there.
Well, and you mentioned the Big 12 offenses and Big 12 games. Yeah. Frankly, that's where the NFL is going. It's a 7-on-7. It's a 7-on-7 league to a certain extent.
Yep. 100%.
I can go back, and you guys are going to hear me repeat myself a lot because I use a lot of phrases, and one of them is, I used to say there was no tight ends in the South because if you were big and fast, they put your hand in the dirt and you play defensive end. That was where the money is going to get in the quarterback. But you're not allowed to You're not allowed to hit the quarterback anymore. You're not allowed to cover anymore. And odds are, if you make a tackle in the defensive backfield, they're going to call you for targeting now. So who wants to go play defense? So if you can find a guy, the corners are becoming more and more valuable. And to a certain extent, the linebackers are becoming phased out a little bit. It's either hit the quarterback or cover the guy on defense. So, you're right. You're right. You can't have enough corners. You cannot have enough guys that can cover back there.
Yeah, and just bring it to Broncos specific, not only just the draft, but the team build in general. Kyle Fuller, 1-year contract. Bryce Callahan, 1 year left on his deal. Ronald Darby, injury concerns. Bryce Callahan, injury concerns. It's not really on the surface a position of need for the Broncos, but if they invest in that and really fortify the position, I would have no issue with it at all. You said something earlier about drafting guys. It's not just the best player available. It's also the guys who are, speaking of best player available, Bobby coming in. Great show. Absolutely loving it. But the big super chat there, over in Iowa, she's a big, we're both Iowans, Bobby and myself. So we got that connection there. So really appreciate you joining us this morning. And thank you for the super generous super chat. We hopefully you'll be rolling with us every morning. I know that you sometimes can't join us for our nighttime shows. But we appreciate you anytime you can come by and say hello. So thank you so much. Good to see you. You mentioned something earlier about taking the best guy available. That's a scheme fit. I also want to add something with George Payton's come in. He's also really emphasized culture fit as well. And I know that's something from the outside you can't really know, but I want to come back to a guy that I think that Chad and Zach have disagreed with myself on it. And it's not so much of an on the field ability, but it's the off the field stuff. And it's somebody that a lot of Broncos country wants at 9. Micah Parsons.
Yeah.
Obviously incredibly talented, but there are ample character concerns with him, and picking at pick 9 for me, I think it's a good enough, deep enough linebacker class where I would be fine punting and letting somebody else take that chance and going elsewhere. Cause I think I can find talent. And you mentioned it too. The linebacker position is becoming devalued. Am I taking a devalued position, even though he's a special talent, a devalued position with all the character concerns that he has at pick 9? I don't know. That just scares me.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into Micah Parsons. This is a good Parsons person. Let's not get confused. I know it's early for a lot of us to talk about, because on my channel, I brought in Mark Brennan, who runs Fight on State for 24/7 CBSI, where Chad and I have both worked. Mark Brennan's one of the best in the business, no matter which school it is. And character concerns weren't a question with him. So, the fact that he wasn't charged with anything, in a day and age where you're looking to bring down your heroes, that where the social media will go after these guys, the character concerns weren't a huge issue for him. Now, I honestly think Micah Parsons is a top 5 guy. I think he's a top 5 talent. And if you can get him at 9, I think you're actually getting an incredible value at 9, Micah Parsons in there. Now, I mentioned that the when we talked about the devaluing of the position, that doesn't necessarily mean the tight end position was devalued 10 years ago for unknown reasons to me, because it finally came back. Gronk was a big part of that, but Tony Gonzalez years ago, Jay Novacek, Jason Witten, all these guys, they're huge weapons. So the fact that if you've got a linebacker with 4.39 speed at 246 pounds, we're talking about these corners, and I put down all their, on my notes, I put down all their pro days. And you can look at Micah Parsons, and his stacks right up with all of those corners. He looks like a 6'3", 245-pound corner when you look at his physical numbers. You put him in the middle of that defense, he's a 3-down. He can cover, he can rush, he can protect the run. He's a monster. If you get him at 9, he's one of the few guys at 4 for the Atlanta Falcons. I said, if they were to get him at 4, I'd be excited to watch him play. I'd be excited. He's not a need. He's not a need at all. But who doesn't need a 6'3", 246, 4'3" guy in the middle of your defense who's not just athletic? This guy makes plays. He's instinctive. He is a productive player with those physical attributes. Yes, please take him.
Well, I love this because I absolutely hear what you're saying. But given the factors of picking at 9, and this is me living and learning, I think it was the 2017 draft, head over heels in love with Malik McDowell. Head over the tools he had, the talent. I mean, he absolutely beat the living heck out of my Iowa Hawkeyes in the Big Ten championship. I still have PTSD about that. Everyone's like, Nick, this guy has character concerns. He might not even make through his rookie contract, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't listen. I was like, I don't care. We'll figure it out in the NFL.
The one
doesn't even play. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry to interrupt. The one that concerns me a little bit when you start is the rules violations, which 99 times out of 100 is a drug test. When you start hearing that these guys are suspended for unspecified rules violations, they failed a drug test. That's what it is, and that's not the case here. And that sticks with you. Dorial Green Beckham is one of the most talented players I ever scouted, ever. We had him number 1 overall in a year because I was like, this is Calvin Johnson Redux coming up. But he failed drug tests for a long time, and never lived up to that. So. I'm not as concerned with Micah Parsons. I'm not with the off the field. Doesn't bother me. To that extent. Like I said, I think you're getting value at 9. Now, you know, and I said even as high as 4. Do I want the Falcons to take him at 4? No. No, I don't want him to go at 4, but I think he's a top 5 talent. I absolutely do.
Would you rank him over Kyle Pitts or Penny Sewell or Rashawn Slater? Where do you, I mean, obviously the talent is there, but it was just 1 year of tape. Really, sometimes he was missing some keys, but he could overcome it with the athleticism, the size. I mean, the guy that I see when I watch him is Devin White the year before he declared. So he's still kind of figuring it out, sometimes overcommitting a little bit. But the athleticism, I think, better coming downhill than Devin White was. So where do we rank him? Because we're talking blue chip caliber prospects right now. Sewell, Pitts, Slater.
So for me, if I'm looking at an old-fashioned, what number ranking are they as far as their talent goes? Yeah, I think Micah Parsons is one of those guys that's like a 98, where Sewell's a 95. You know, when we're looking at that. But I would take Sewell ahead of Parsons because it's a more premium position. Okay?
Yeah.
So for me, when I'm looking at the number 4 spot right there, because that's the first open spot right now. You know, it's going quarterback, quarterback, quarterback. Unless something just bizarre happens, the first 3 guys coming off the board are going to be quarterbacks. So for me, the first non-quarterback I would take in this draft is Penny Sewell. Period. He's a number 1 overall left tackle in a lot of years. So he's the guy I would take. I've seen some people in the chat, you know, saying about does he go, you know, would he be there at 9? Take no, God no. There's no way he should make it past the Bengals at 5. He just shouldn't. Kenny, want to answer your question real quick? Love to see that, you know, Mile High Huddle has a new show. Appreciate you coming in. We'll do this more and more and get bigger and better as you guys with your support. Is there a corner with high upside that no one is talking about? That's a hard question for me to answer because everybody's always talking about everybody these days. But for me, Eric Stokes, University of Georgia, sub 4.3 guy at over 6 feet. That's a guy with a high upside, you know, and he's not just a fast guy. He can play a little bit too. He's got good size, excellent speed, just figuring out how to play this game. You can get him in the second round. I think that he's a guy that you could watch for the second round. And then later on down the draft, if you look at my channel, you know, pop that up again real quick at my channel. There is we're talking about a sleeper on there for Michigan, Ambry Thomas. Sam Webb, who is a former colleague of mine, also runs the MichiganInsider.com. He loves Ambry Thomas. I said, "Who's your guy that people aren't talking about?" And before I could even get "Who's your guy," he interrupts me and says, "Ambry Thomas." Ambry Thomas. He goes, "I think this could be the best guy to come out of this draft." Like, wow, that's a bold statement because he's going to go in the 4th or 5th. So that's your guy. Keep an eye out for him.
Well, I'm going to pivot there. My late round guy, and he was Michigan, but transferred over to Minnesota, Benjamin St. Juste. I know that he's probably going to need a year in the fermentation chamber, but if you're looking for length, athleticism, you know, the Broncos don't really need a guy to start day one, hopefully. I mean, you got Michael Ojemudia there, who was up and down last year, but he can be your 4th cornerback just fine. I think St. Juste has the potential to be a boundary starting cornerback in this league. So he's a little bit older because the transfer and everything, but if you're looking for traits, I like him. But a good call on Ambry Thomas. We got Mr. Boggins coming in here as well. Where would you take a running back this year? This is much debate for Broncos country. I see people, I think the rumors are that Pat Shurmur, Broncos offensive coordinator, probably coaching for his life this season, really has, you know, hard eyes for Najee Harris. And if the Broncos traded back once or twice, Najee Harris would be a guy they would potentially target. Now, I very much follow the analytics side of thing when it comes to team building. I'm not running back in the 1st round. I don't think you get the value there, especially with that rookie contract. I'd rather much get a cornerback, an edge rusher, defensive lineman, et cetera, where you're going to get much better return on the dollar than the running back position. And we see it every year. Running backs, you can find them day 2, day 3. Undrafted free agents. I mean, the Broncos should know better than anybody. You can find undrafted free agents. They can be productive at the running back position. But do you have any thoughts about running back position this year? I think it's a little bit weaker than most years, but there are 3 that I think are pretty darn talented and some good scheme fits later on.
Well, and Nick, I was going to, agree with you with the Broncos, especially. You know, if anybody has done more to devalue the running back position in the NFL, it's the Denver Broncos.
Yeah.
You know, when they're running out 2,000-yard rushers back to back, it's like, everybody can run for 2,000 yards with them. So I think where would I take a running back this year? It depends, you know, how badly. I think Najee Harris is hands down the best guy in this draft, and I think he's the running back position has devalued to the point that this guy should be taken in the top 15. I mean, he is such a weapon. He is so good in every aspect of the game. You need a receiver. You need a 230-pound receiver. Okay, we'll throw him the ball.
Yeah.
You can get the ball to him so many ways that I think it's Najee Harris. Travis Etienne, he might slide into that second-round pick for the Broncos if you wanted to go that way. But I agree with you. I think there's really good value here. A guy I really like out of North Carolina, Michael Carter, Senior Bowl guy.
Yeah.
He's a guy you can probably get in the third round. And what I liked about all the guys at the Senior Bowl, and all these guys have highlights on my YouTube channel. All these running backs are at the Senior Bowl. They've all got highlights. They could all catch the ball. Every single one of them could catch the ball. So the fact that it's not just a one-trick pony, and these guys are all receivers out of the backfield just makes them that much more valuable. And in a sense, they're devaluing themselves. If I've got 7 of the same guy, I don't need to take one in the second round. I can get him in the fourth round. So, that's where I think about those guys.
Yeah, a lot of good names there. I'm just going to throw out some day 2 guys that I think are pretty talented as well. I like Khalil Herbert out of Virginia Tech, built low to the ground, not as much of a bowling ball as CJ Anderson was, but I think he'd be a good scheme fit, very patient runner. I like Ramondre Stevenson from Oklahoma. He's a big boy, 6 foot, about 230 pounds. Trey Sermon's another one that I like a lot. I also, he didn't play this year. I think he opted out, but Kylan Hill from Mississippi State. Those are some inside zone gap scheme guys that I think would make a lot of sense for the Broncos if you're looking to get a 4-year of cost control of a running back that can be number 2 to Melvin Gordon this year, but a solid guy.
And I'm going to add one more because the Mississippi State kid was at the Senior Bowl and was one of those guys I was talking about. The other one that was about 230 pounds out of Missouri. So Iowa folks was Larry Roundtree. Looked really good at the Senior Bowl. And if you look at NFL mock draft database, he's got a 200s grade on him. You get him in the 6th. Are you kidding? That's a steal.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of Iowa as well, somebody who tested out of the gym or whatever, the practice facility, Iowa State. Hurts me to say because I'm a Hawkeye, but Iowa State, I believe the name is pronounced Kune Nwangu, 6'1", 210 pounds. And I think he ran like a, 4.31 40, 1.45 10-yard split. So somebody might be able to get late. I know that Iowa State has Breece Hall, who's probably going to be one of the first running backs taken as soon as he can come out. But he's one that I like a lot late as well. So we got Tyler coming in here. Tyler, thank you very much for joining us for Broncos for Breakfast, coming at you guys Tuesdays and Thursdays, 7 a.m. up until, or I guess it would be 8 a.m. for the mountain time from now into the draft with Scott and myself. Would you rather Sewell and Browning or Parsons and Eichenberg? Assessing only talent, no off-field. Well, I think I know where you're going to go, given what you said between Parsons and Sewell.
Well, maybe I'd probably go the latter on this because I really like Eichenberg. I think I like Eichenberg a lot, so I'd probably go Parsons and Eichenberg, knowing that I don't think there's that big a drop-off from Sewell to Eichenberg, but from Browning to but I don't think there's anybody in the draft at linebacker that's close to Parsons. So if I could go that way, I think I like Sewell better than Eichenberg, but I like Parsons better than pretty much every defensive player in this draft. So I'd go Parsons and Eichenberg on that one. One real thing on scouting, because all these pro days, we're seeing some hyperactive 40 times. These guys are running their 40s in just the most ideal conditions possible. To judge an athlete, look at your short shuttles, look at your L cones, look at your verticals, look at your standing broad jumps. You can't fake those. You can't fake them. That's change of direction, and that's explosiveness. You can train 0.3 of a second out of a 40 time. You can, and it doesn't mean you're that much faster. It's just your better technique. So anywhere 4.3 to 4.6 is fast. Now let's look at the other numbers and see where they start matching up. And when you start seeing sub 7 40 times. Or sub 7 L cones, that's elite. That's elite. When you start seeing 11-foot broad jumps, that's elite. 35, 36 plus inch vertical jumps, that's elite. The 40 times, they're starting to get thrown around a lot as well.
Yeah, and a lot of that, I think it's Dane Brugler has mentioned multiple times. It's ideal conditions. These guys aren't going through the mental gauntlet that is the combine. These guys are exhausted, tired, interviews, medicals, and then they have to go out there and perform later on. They're waking up out of their dorm room or wherever they're sleeping the night before, freshly rested, and going out there and performing in ideal conditions. So Noah Fant, again, go Hawks. Got to get that in there. Everyone drink your coffee, I guess, not your beer for the morning show. But is it just me, or is this the fastest draft class in history of the NFL? Should have come out this year, would have made me a little faster. The amount of 4.3s I've seen is wild. I mean, yep, that's true. The pro day numbers, grain of salt. I do want to actually, you made an interesting point here, and I want to bring it back to you. You mentioned Eric Stokes earlier, and the number is obviously good 40. I think his agility drills were like in the 5th and 7th percentile. Very concerning 3-cone and short shell. I know that's not really his game, but do you have any concerns about that with Stokes?
I would, absolutely. When I get the results from combines, when I get them sent to me from all over the place, I wouldn't sort by 40. I didn't sort by 40. I sorted by shuttle times. They're your athletes. I'd go to the top and I'd look over and I'd look at height and weight. Okay, he's a 4'1". What's his height and weight? So yeah, if his agility drills were out, it means you're stiff. I could see if I saw a 4'1" kids coming out of high school. If I saw a 4'1" 40, he was returning punts and playing corner for his team or quarterback. But he was your punt returner. The jittery guy, the athlete. So. Those numbers would concern me, and I think that's why you can say upside, because why isn't this 6'4" guy being talked about in the middle of the first round, and that's why. So we're upside. We're an upside guy there with Stokes.
Yeah, 100%. I get it a lot. We got Joseph Anthony coming in here on YouTube. I say we take a target a running back in the 4th or 5th, but I am for sure down with Micah Parsons with 9 this year. Just look at Tampa Bay defense last year. How can you devalue the middle linebacker position? And I hear you, but I want to counterpoint because, again, I am very much an analytics point of view. Who was the number 1 defense in the NFL last year? The Los Angeles Rams. Name me the Rams starting off-ball linebackers. Cricket. I mean, obviously it is better to have linebackers, especially with how 4.25s are going, but it's kind of like tight end. There's a rare number of difference makers at the tight end. There's a lot of solid starters, but the actual difference makers I can count on 3 fingers, right? The guys who are like transcendent to the position with Waller, Kittle, and Kelsey. Right now, there are obviously other good tight ends too, but I'm talking about true difference makers. I think that's the same with linebacker. There's a bunch of solid guys, but there aren't true difference makers. And if you think Parsons can be that guy, hallelujah. But that's great. But there is you can find bodies there. And it's another position where, again, over the years, there's an equal number of quality starters that are drafted day 2 as there are day 1. It's not a position like edge rusher or cornerback or quarterback where if you don't get a guy round 1, your chances of landing a quality starter drop precipitously. So that just that influences my decision. And again, we talked yesterday. You're a math guy. I'm a analytics guy, a statistical analysis guy. So if I can let something like that guide my decision and give myself the best probability of maximizing my return, I'm going to take that. And the last bit of your question there, Anthony, Tampa Bay defense, you said, the linebackers were great in that Super Bowl. No doubt about it. My biggest takeaway was if you can get pressure with 4 on Patrick Mahomes and drop 7, you're going to have a good time. So I think the biggest takeaway I took was you need to got horses up front that win one-on-one, and then the rest of it will fall in line.
If you can get pressure with 4, you're a dangerous defense. And that's what makes this draft so interesting is it's deep, except in the most important, in my opinion, the most important position, the wrecker on defense. There's not a top 10 defensive end in this draft. If you take a guy in the top 10 at defensive end, you're reaching a little bit. So, so sitting at 4, that first open position for the Atlanta Falcons, I start looking at, do you want your quarterback of the future and go there with number 4? Or then you start going premium position. Now, a lot of Falcons fans are saying Kyle Pitts, the best player available. I'm like, well, best player available is subjective. I think Micah Parsons might be the best player available. I think Penny Sewell might be the best player available. But if there was an edge rusher that was in that conversation, that's where I go to fix a number 32 ranked defense. The best pass defense in the world is a quarterback on his butt.
Yeah. 100%. I know that some analytics, we're typing analytics, but I know some of them are so coverage over pass rush. Nada. I think there's a flaw in how they only grade on target snaps and when the guys are thrown at it. If I can get a guy who can win one-on-one constantly and change how teams have to even game plan and scheme, that's the difference maker. So this is a good pivot here, and we'll get to Tim here first. How big of a gap is it between Parsons and the next rated linebackers? And I guess I want to pivot this specifically to Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, who linebacker, will, box safety, Swiss Army knife. And thank you so much for the comments, Joseph. It's okay that we disagree slightly. Different opinions are the spice of life. The NFL draft is subjective. You got the best guys in the world making millions of dollars, and they get it wrong constantly. So we love it that you can come in here and give it back. If you don't agree with us, let us know. And Kyle come in and I can name the Rams starting linebackers now listening to Nick this past week. I mean, it's a good point. Granted, also they have a Jalen Ramsey and an Aaron Donald. So that maybe changes the formula a little bit for what the Rams can do, but it's still worth pointing out. So Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah is a guy I'm curious about for you because I'm wondering about the scheme fit. Vic Fangio typically does not use kind of that overhang guy or a will linebacker type, more of the 3-4 guys are having to scrape. And then also guy who's rising quick, Jamin Davis from Kentucky. Your thoughts there on those two guys?
Honestly, I know more about Owusu-Koramoah, so I'm gonna start with him. He is very similar to Micah Parsons. Very similar. The big difference there is 30 pounds. I look at Deion Jones. I hate to keep going back to the Falcons, but Owusu-Koramoah to me is Deion Jones of the Atlanta Falcons. He's a slightly bigger, but he is a terrific playmaker. He's got all of the instincts in the world, so you can move him around. And is he big enough to play in the middle? Yeah, he is, especially if you're going to drop him in coverage, which you can. You can rush him from the edge. You can use him in a lot of different ways, and he's fast. He's a little undersized. He's fast, and he's instinctive. Parsons has all those things, and he's significantly bigger. So for me, that's the difference. There's not a huge drop-off. And when you get him in the NFL, like Nick was just saying, you miss on guys all the time. People are, I'd get crap for missing guys ranking 2,500 kids in high school. I'm like, half the NFL first round goes bust. What makes you think I'm going to get them all right, for God's sakes? So I don't think there's a huge drop off, but I think because he's 250 pounds, Parsons is a top 5 talent, or I think JOK is in the teens. He's in the teens there.
Yeah, I just questioned the scheme fit specifically. And obviously, a Vic Fangio, who's been a great innovator of defense his entire career. I mean, you don't get to that age and still in the league as one of the best unless you are an innovator. So if he says, I'm going to change my defensive formula, get a smaller guy in there, they obviously targeted Joe Schobert, who's not great at the point of attack. They signed Mark Barron, who's kind of a glorified safety linebacker. So if that guy fits, that's fine. And Jamin Davis is another one. I do wonder why he just started this past season for Kentucky when he is the athletic specimen that he is. I can't answer that, but that's something that somebody with boots on the ground could answer. And before we get out of here, last topic I want to get to, I think, guys, Thursday, we'll probably talk a little bit more quarterbacks since we avoid that topic almost entirely, which, hallelujah. I mean, God, everybody knows where we're at on quarterbacks. But you mentioned edge rusher. If there was an edge rusher of choice, let's say there was a Chase Young in this class and he fell to 4, no brainer, or one of the Bosas, Ohio State, man. They just breed edge rushers. But there's not one this year. I do think, though, I have 4 personally edge rushers that I think I would be fine with if the Broncos traded back from 9. And those would be Jalen Phillips with the concussions. I'm not a neurologist, so I can't speak to that, but his tape last year was awesome. Really, really good pass rusher. Azeez Ojulari, you're down in Georgia. I'm sure you have some opinions on Azeez. Kwity Paye, and then also a guy who I personally have heard the Broncos traveled to Penn State for their pro day. Micah Parsons, they obviously wanted to check out Micah Parsons. He wasn't the main attraction. Jason Owa was the main attraction for the Broncos heading to watch Penn State. So your thoughts on the Broncos? Let's say they're a team that might trade back. And if they trade back, I think the best value they're going to get is if they can get one of those 4 edge rushers. I know that they have Von Miller, they got Bradley Chubb, they got Malik Reed, but Von Miller is going to be 33 this year, last year of his contract. Malik Reed is solid, and Bradley Chubb is about to get paid. So we talked about it. If you can get 4 guys after the quarterback, everything falls into place. So what are your thoughts on those edge rushers? How would you rank those guys? Or is there anybody I'm overlooking? Obviously, there's Joe Tryon as well as another one who a lot of the draft media likes.
So good topic. So I was waiting for the Jason Owe discussion there, just because his numbers were just ridiculous. I mean, there's a lot of ridiculous pro days going around, and then there's his. I mentioned Parsons looked like a corner. Well, Owe was bigger, faster, more explosive than Parsons in all of these things, and he was first team All Big Ten despite not having a ton of production. Because the coaches and everybody recognized the impact he still had on the game, because you had to move away from him. You had to scheme away from this guy. I've got the numbers here for him. He was 6'5", 257 pounds, 4.36 on his 40. And I mentioned, watch the shuttles, 4.21 shuttle. Okay, J.C. Horn's shuttle was, he didn't run one. So, but his 40 was 4.39, right in there. 6.83 L cone. I mean, I'm not joking. You could teach this guy to play corner. It's 6'5", 260 pounds with this type of athleticism. 36.5 vertical leap. What I would like to do, you want to talk about a viral video? Get him out on a basketball court and start doing windmill dunks. People would love to see that type of thing. So I think he's by far the highest upside guy, without a doubt. So when I start hearing of teams trading back, I'm like, if you trade back later in the first round, take this guy, take him, because he's the if you're going to miss on a guy, Mr. Boggins, 0 sacks, but still first team All Big Ten. Okay. And that's because I talked with Mark about him. We talk about him on the show. Go to my channel, look up the Penn State. We talk a lot about him. Azeez Ojulari, he's a little different to me. I think he's going to fall a little bit based on his pro day compared to some of the other guys. But we talk about him with my Georgia draft picks with Brooks Austin, one of your colleagues over at SI's Fan Nation. And his improvement, his trajectory has just gone up. But I think if I'm drafting first and I have to get this right, the first guy I take is probably Kwity Paye. And we talk about him. I did a Michigan chat with Sam Webb, and we got so all these guys are on my channel also with in-depth scouting reports of those three. So I think Kwity Paye is probably the most sure thing of the bunch. Oh God, but I'd be hard pressed not to take Owe early. Just the old saying in the NBA was, if you're going to miss on a 7-footer. Well, if I'm going to miss in the first round, I'm going to miss on a guy that's 6'5", 260 pounds and has the athletic traits of a good cornerback. So I think that's where I go with those guys on the edge. And if he had a little more production, a little more time, then you're talking about him being that guy in the top 5.
Yeah, I was surprised he came out, because I thought that he was part of, Broncos fans should know all too well, a lot of your sack production is dependent on how good your offense is. If you're playing with a lead, guess what? Your pass rushers come in their ears back. You have more 5-step drops, 7-step drops. Quarterback has to be a little bit more greedy in the pocket. And that's not been the case for the Broncos. That wasn't the case for Penn State last year. I know they are a recruiting juggernaut, but that offense last year struggled. The quarterback position, not good. And also it was a weird, obviously Big Ten football in general, weird season, limited chance to get after it. One big thing for Owe for me is that obviously you see the athleticism. He's still pretty new to football. He was a basketball guy. I think he just started playing football as either his junior year or senior year of high school.
That's right.
But you saw huge steps this past year in run defense. And that's something that's a non-negotiable for a Vic Fangio defense. You have to be able to stop the run to be able to play your pass defense personnel. So if you can get that, then you get the chance to pin your ears back and be a pass rusher. But Owe, from his sophomore year or his 2019 year to 2020, night and day difference for his run defense. You saw him take big steps. And I think you could probably see similar for him as a pass rusher. Right now he's just winning based on athletic traits. Flexibility, ankle flexion, explosiveness, length. He's got it all. He just doesn't have the skills yet. Has the traits, doesn't have the skills. And sitting him a year behind Von Miller, Bradley Chubb, getting him in different packages, I think that's a plan. Maybe it doesn't help the Broncos too much in 2021, but I've said it on here a million times for the listeners. You don't draft for 2021. You draft for 2022, 2023, 2024. And if you can get Owe in here and he ends up being the best pass rusher in this class, that's just great process. That's what you want to do. So I'm really happy to hear you say that, because I know I've gotten some pushback with having Owe as high as I do. I do want to get to one more comment before we get out of here. What do you aren't as high on Ojulari as I am. I think he's one of the youngest players in the class. Not the best ankle flexion, but explosive. Not the biggest body. How much more weight can he put on? But he still bangs. He can hold the edge pretty well. And Fangio typically likes to use a more of a power edge with a more finesse edge that can drop into coverage. And I see that with Ojulari. So Mr. Boggins coming in here saying Ojulari is the best scheme for what Fangio likes to do. Specifically, Bradley Chubb being more of that power edge versus Von Miller, or Ojulari in this case, as the more finesse, drop into coverage, speed edge. Do you have any thoughts on him? Go a little bit more specifics with Ojulari, because I do like him. I do understand that he has probably less versatility from a scheme perspective. But for Fangio specifically, I think he's a good fit.
Here it is for me with Ojulari. He's smaller than Micah Parsons.
Yeah. Longer arms, though. 34-inch arms.
You're talking about a defensive end that he's a tweener. He's 6'2", 248, 249, just 6'2", 250 as an end. How do you want to use him? If I've got Owe, we mentioned, if I've got a guy that's just learning, I can put him down in third downs and say, you got one job. You got one. Go get that quarterback. Go get him. I don't want you to think about anything else. It's 3rd and 9. Go get the quarterback. That's it. And you can make a lot of money going out and going out there and doing that and just going and getting the quarterback without having to even think about scheme or anything else. Just go get the quarterback. Ojulari, I think, is a really good football player. But when we're talking, would I have him on my team? Absolutely. But we're talking about, who do we want over who and putting these guys in order. And the fact that he's a little undersized, could you play him in a 3-4 outside linebacker? Oh, yeah. I think he could do that just fine. 4-3 pass rushing specialist, but at 250 pounds as a starting defensive end in a 4-3, that makes me a little nervous. That does. It makes me a little nervous. Whereas a couple of these other guys are, they're already 260, 265 plus. And you got to be knocking on the door of 3 bills to play end a lot of times in this league. I see thin defensive tackles. I'm like, well, he's going to be an end. I said that about Richard Seymour coming out. I didn't think, if you guys remember him, he was from the University of Georgia. He was 6'6", 290, and he didn't have a whole lot of production at Georgia. He was put inside, and he was getting leveraged by these 5th-year seniors that are 6'2" and can bench press a piano. But he moved to end. They moved him out to end in the NFL. So for me, Ojulari is a size. And one thing I want you to listen for this: the bell word when Owe gets talked, because you're going to hear this word for word. His best football is ahead of him. Someone is going to say it on air the day he gets drafted. I promise you.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. That's going to do it. I actually got to get ready to go to work. But we appreciate you guys. Make sure we're going to see you again on Thursday. I think we talked a lot today. We didn't get to as much of the offensive line as I'd like to, but I think Thursday we need to get into the quarterbacks because, you're a Falcons fan. Falcons picking at 4, Trey Lance, maybe Justin Fields. Will they trade back? You said the draft starts at 4. I think the draft starts at 3 because I don't understand Mac Jones at 3, but we'll see. It seems like there's a lot of smoke there. But we will get to that next Thursday for Broncos for Breakfast. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. You can follow Scott on Twitter at Scout Kennedy. Also go to his YouTube page. Chad, if you'd put that up real quick. He talked about it a lot earlier. YouTube.com /C/Scott Kennedy. Make sure you're checking out. He has a lot of prospect breakdowns there and a lot of other takes as well. You guys can follow myself on Twitter at Nick Kendell MHH. Also, guys, if you're joining us today, right now, we got 100 eyeballs in here. If you're on Facebook, click the thumbs up, click the heart react, click the little surprise guy. Monday morning breakfast for Broncos. I'm in. That's my face before coffee. Just shock. Also, guys, follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle, where we have a lot of off-season content going on. Like I said, it's football Christmas. The NFL draft, every team gets presents. I guess maybe not the Seahawks. I'm out in Seattle. They traded all their capitals for a box safety. It's a good time. Even if we all disagree on the takes, the team's going to get better. We can all agree about that, and that's something that everyone can get excited about. So appreciate you guys for joining us today. Says everyone's saying awesome show, nice new pod. You know what? You guys are awesome for joining us this morning. You can get it to us on YouTube. Make sure you hit subscribe. So that way, when we go live, you can join us for your morning commute, or you're just sitting there getting the kids ready, putting on a little football talk. We'll keep it G-rated mostly, unless we get a little bit heated about, how exciting, Penny Sewell is digging a guy into the ground. But you guys have a great rest of your Tuesday. Scott, what do you got going the rest of the day?
Oh, I'm probably going to kill some time until the international football cranks up at 3. It's for me that's late. I'm like I don't know how y'all do it in Europe, waiting for Champions League at 8 o'clock. I'm starting to shakes already with Champions League coming on. So I'm a big fan, and we'll talk more one day when we've got some time to kill, if anybody cares, about why the Champions League is one of the coolest competitions in the world.
Just a sidebar before we get out of here. I wish college football, there's too much money involved, but I wish they would do relegation. I want to see a Champions League in college football where Oregon's playing Alabama. And
not just that. Look at the Pittsburgh Pirates went 20 years without a winning season. It's the fans are the ones that suffer, at least with relegation. The owners suffer too if they've got no ambition. In our Marxist leagues, it's the fans that suffer while the owners just keep getting richer and richer, whether or not they care about winning, and it's disgusting. But that's a day.
Absolutely. Talk about that's like one of the most capitalistic ideas, and it's America. If America would have thought of it first, they'd have been like, "Oh, this is amazing."
It's cutthroat. I said, for as socialist as Western Europe is, international football is cutthroat capitalism, and it's it's fun to watch.
Absolutely. Well, guys, thank you very much. You have a great rest of your Tuesday. We'll be here again at 8 a.m. for Broncos for Breakfast this Thursday to talk some quarterbacks. Appreciate you guys. Have a good rest of your day. Scott, appreciate you. Good show. And we'll see you on Thursday.